If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of stress eating, people pleasing, or exhaustion that leaves little space for you, this episode is a gentle nudge toward freedom. Today, emotional eating expert Amber Romaniuk shares how food, perfectionism, and stress can become mirrors for what we most need to heal. You'll learn what's really behind self-sabotage and how understanding your body's signals can help you feel more energized and fulfilled every day. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest here with us, Amber Romaniuk. She is an emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert with over 12 years of experience helping high-achieving women build body confidence, deepen their self-trust, and achieve optimal health through mindset, healing, and self-care. After overcoming her own emotional eating, hormone imbalances, and self-sabotage, Amber founded Body Freedom and guided others to experience lasting transformation. She hosts the No Sugarcoating podcast, which has over 2 million downloads and listeners in more than 90 countries. So very excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Kendra. I'm really excited to be with you today.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, like how you got in this space, your podcast. Yeah, just give us a rundown.
Yeah, so my entire business was created through me going through a very deep struggle with binge eating, food addiction, emotional eating, and bulimia in my early 20s. And I was unconsciously, I think, an emotional eater from a young age, just due to different things that I had been through. And I think there's just so much awareness to be built around our childhoods, and not that we have to nitpick through them, but just like a defining moment for me was when I was 5 and it was my first day taking the school bus, and I got on the bus and the older boys called me fat and ugly, and then the whole bus made fun of me. And I took that on so deeply and took that identity of fat and ugly on for the next 20 years of my life. I didn't know how to just brush that off. I think it was a trauma that was ingrained in my nervous system. And I think we can think, oh, that wasn't a big deal or whatever. But like when we look back and see how certain experiences or comments shaped our identity and the way that we felt about ourselves and our insecurities, it was very significant. I also grew up, I'm the only child, and my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis before I was born. And so I think witnessing her decline from childhood was very hard and very upsetting because I absolutely loved her so much. And so witnessing like your idol decline and go through all of these struggles and not knowing what to do, or I just felt helpless. And so I think that there was so much emotion and like stress that just built up in my body because I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to express it or feel it or process it because we don't learn that as children. Maybe now, I don't know. But like when I was a kid, it was just like, oh yeah, whatever. I'll just hang on to it. And then also witnessing that stress that my parents were going through, I didn't want to be a burden. So I think just like holding everything in because I don't want to bother them. They already have enough on their plate. So there's these innocent things that seem so innocent that accumulate. And then food was always available. My mom and I had a very intimate relationship with food. Everything we did revolved around food. And I think that was a way for her to compensate for some of the things we couldn't do. And I think there was some guilt there for that. And after I healed my relationship with food, I lovingly observed she had a food addiction. And I think it was brought on by like the diagnoses and just lineage of like her mom dealing with it and grandmother. But it was just so interesting to observe as I was healing all the pieces. And it's not blaming. It was just like, wow, this is so interesting that this was part of what built this identity that I had, the unworthiness that I felt. And then you start learning about diets and you start observing media in Hollywood and what a horrible influence they are when it comes to body image, because everything's photoshopped and edited and they don't tell you that. And then you start comparing yourself, thinking there's something wrong with you because you don't look like the fake images and videos that they're selling you. And then they sell you the false solution, the diet, the restriction, the burn more calories, and all this BS that literally just stresses the body out so much. And then I started really falling deep into binge eating, like very intensively in my early 20s. I had a breakup. It was really upsetting. Could barely eat, lost weight really quickly. And the interesting thing about weight is the weight loss industry and the diet industry will really convince you, like, once you lose weight, you'll finally be happy. Like, it's the be all end all to all your problems. And it's not. And I lost the weight and I wasn't happier. Nothing was fixed. Nothing was better. And then it was like this switch flip. And I really got into a deep level of binge eating. And I was eating until I was so full I was sick. I gained 80 pounds in 4 months. I binged and purged for 6 months, thinking if I purge, then I won't gain weight, even though it's so destructive on the body, and set me up for easier weight gain due to all the inflammation and the hormonal stress. And it's actually wild. I had an experience a few months ago where I had a overstimulation to something, and I wasn't like flu sick, but I got sick. And then I went and got my labs done the next day, and to see how high some of the inflammatory markers and ferritin and other things were due to that reaction, I was like, I can't imagine what my levels would have looked like through 6 months of binging and purging, because I was doing that several days a week. And it's such an invasive behavior on the body. And just the way that these behaviors impact us on such a deep level that we're not aware of. I think it's one of the things that makes it easier to stay in the behaviors because we're chasing that dopamine high. But it just was the darkest time of my life for sure, because it was just like, how did I get here? Why is this happening? Now I'm the heaviest I've ever been. I felt so much shame and embarrassment around my body, the way that I looked. I felt unrecognizable. And I couldn't stop this self-sabotage with food, this nonstop loss of control, this asphyxiation around food, planning my next binge, planning my next diet, trying to control the food in hopes that I wouldn't binge again, trying different diets to control the binge eating, trying different eating styles, thinking that food was the problem when, yes, certain foods are addictive and have addictive ingredients put in them on purpose, but it wasn't the food. It was all these other things that had accumulated that I had no idea what that was from. And so my low point moment was after I'd thrown the food in the garbage. I was like a couple years into this like really intensive binge eating. Now I stopped purging, but I was starting to actually learn a little bit about binge eating and emotional eating. And I was like, I think this is actually what I'm doing, but I still don't know how to stop. I don't want to hurt my body, but I want to eat the food. And I think that's one of the biggest things with addiction is like, you don't really want to hurt your body, but there's so many other things going on that you want the reward, you want the dopamine high, like you want to numb out from feeling everything. And so that desire outweighed the suffering that I was causing myself. And that low point moment was when I had finished a binge. I'd always threw the food in the garbage. And that particular night, it was, this is the last time you're going to do this, that all or nothing coming in. You might as well go and eat the rest of the food. And so I went into the kitchen, pulled out the cookies and ate them, and then threw them in the back alley dumpster. And I went back out there and ate them. And I needed that moment to happen because I was in such denial that what I was doing wasn't a big deal. And that experience, that low point, crushed the denial that what was going on wasn't a big deal. It was a very big deal. And it also crushed like the fear of the unknown of trying to deal with it. The overwhelm of where do I even start? I have so much weight to lose. I have no idea how to heal this. And just like all the discomfort that I didn't want to step into because it was such a comfort zone of suffering I was in. What I was doing was so familiar, but it was very unhealthy. And that really prompted me onto my healing journey. And it was a very physical, mental, emotional, energetic, even spiritual experience healing. But that healing really is what made me realize I think I just went through all of that because I meant to help other women with it, especially. I have the brain and the mindset, like I know exactly what these women are going through, whether they're just minorly emotionally eating, they're full-blown binge eating, they're in bulimia, they have food addiction, whatever it is. And that's what prompted me to really get into this work is after fully healing overcoming these behaviors, building self-love, building my worth, my confidence, learning about the hormone, the gut, the blood sugar piece, like all these aspects, like I had no idea until I healed it myself.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure at this point you're used to sharing this story, but I know for listeners, this is probably resonating with a lot of them. Like maybe that it's something they still haven't faced, or maybe they're seeing it in a loved one. You talk about this story and all these challenges you had, like this loss of control, that helplessness, feeling unworthy, that constant comparison, this darkness. How did I get here? All of these things coming up for you. So then you had that moment where you were going to the trash to get that garbage and everything, and you said, I didn't know what to do next. Can you walk us through those next steps? What happened?
Yeah. So for me, and it looks different for everybody, but for me, I was like, I can't stop eating sugar. So I'm going to see what I can learn about sugar. And so when I started to learn about sugar and the way that it spikes your blood sugar and that it's 10 times more addictive than cocaine and it's literally refined to make you addicted to it, learning about all of this started to help me not feel crazy and like it wasn't my fault and that there wasn't something wrong with me. And when you start to realize that there's nothing wrong with you, that these behaviors are so complex and multi-layered, and we're not taught about them or how to deal with them properly. You're just told to have willpower. Here's a meal plan to try. Do this weight loss plan. Like that is not going to help you heal your relationship with food and yourself. And so learning about that and then starting to use more natural sweeteners, and like I actually was addicted to wheat and dairy as well. Like I'd eat a piece of cheese and want to eat the whole block. I'd eat a piece of bread and want to eat the whole loaf. And learning about the properties of dairy, the casein, which is the protein dairy that also can give you a dopamine high, and the gluten in the wheat that can give you a dopamine high, especially in North America, because it's concentrated 400% more than it was 50 years ago. Like that literally triggers the receptors in the brain that heroin triggers. And when I was learning about this, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. But it's when I started to eat more whole foods and added more variety with my nutrition, and I still wanted to binge on healthy things like a whole bag of cashews or a whole jar of peanut butter and bananas, that I'm like, this is more than just the food. And that's when I went on the very emotional healing journey. And I had to get lovingly honest with myself, which was like, I don't love myself. I'm still obsessed with the number on the scale. I have no idea what's triggering me. I am afraid to feel my emotions, and I have no healthy ways to cope. And so I was like, I guess these are probably the things that I need to figure out now. And so I think this is a big piece of where I see a lot of the women that I work with blocked, is because we don't know all of our triggers. And you may know some of them, but it's very important that we understand what is actually triggering us to go to food, because those triggers are teachers and they're trying to show us where we're out of alignment or where we need to give something attention. And so I started to make a list of my triggers, and I put it on every room wall of my apartment to start to remind me to check in before I just go to the store and buy the food again. And I started to realize, oh, there's certain triggers that are really strong that are hard to work through, and others that are easier for me to work through. And so there was dozens of triggers, and there's dozens of potential triggers that I see my clients have, everything from overwhelm to getting on the scale and not liking the number, to seeing the number you want, to going, I'm going to go reward myself with food, to having a negative interaction, to not sleeping well, to hormone imbalances and blood sugar issues and cravings and negative self-talk. Hanging on to shame and guilt after your last binge is a huge emotional eating or binge eating trigger. Not drinking enough water, like starting to see all these different things that were fueling the behavior was, for me, were very helpful. And then sitting and starting to feel through emotion. I was terrified to feel my emotions. I thought like the world was going to end. And so I started this was all baby steps, like just put on a timer for 30 seconds and just try feeling through something. And I was feeling fear in that moment. I'm like, okay, just 30 seconds and just see what happens. And I put the timer on and I felt through fear for 30 seconds and got through the other side and was like, oh, I'm okay. Everything's okay. And I don't want to binge anymore. And I did it. And those moments where you actually try and you muster up your courage and your bravery and you get uncomfortable and you see you can do it, it helps you build confidence and belief in yourself that you can build this momentum forward, which is so great. And so I started trying to feel through my emotions more. And I started learning different practices and tools that could help me cope with these triggers in other ways other than going to food. So journaling, breath, meditation, EFT tapping, getting out into nature, I didn't really talk to a lot of other people about it because I wasn't ready to share about it. But I think just a couple of close friends sharing a little bit about some of these foods are tempting me. Can we do something else other than go for dinner, go for tea, or go for a walk? Just sitting and reflecting on what I was feeling. Even if I binged afterward, like journaling, like what happened? Why did I do that? What can I try doing differently next time? And all of that was really helpful and really minimized how often I was binge eating. And the biggest piece was catching negative self-talk, starting to forgive myself for everything that I had said and put myself through, and starting to compliment myself and build myself up and tell myself I love myself and that I was a great woman and how beautiful I was, because I had programmed my subconscious mind in the latter and I needed to reprogram my subconscious mind. And of course, at first you feel like a fraud when you're doing that. It's like, I don't believe that. I don't feel that. But with time and repetition of forgiveness and building this loving relationship with yourself, you do start to feel it. It does start to catch, and then it clicks. And as you build that and you heal your relationship with food simultaneously, you get to the point where you're in such a deep love and respect for yourself that you will not disrespect yourself and your body via self-sabotage anymore. You will take ownership and responsibility and feel through whatever is going on, or explore it, or talk to someone about it, or get help with it, or whatever it is. And that's what happened. And that was so profound. I'll never forget the moment where the self-love clicked. And it's going to feel different for everyone, but it actually clicked for me in a moment. And it was powerful to be like, wow, this is what self-love feels like. And I fully healed those behaviors. I believe anybody can when you address the roots. But it was just very powerful to walk through those pieces, to detach from the number on the skeleton, learn how to listen to my body and have awareness was my biggest superpower to build. And still to this day, my attunement is my biggest gift because my body is very clear and I can shift things very easily or gain awareness of what I need to support her with. If a hormone goes off or I get a symptom or there's some emotional thing that I need to deal with. And so when you heal this, the level of awareness and attunement and connection you build with your body is priceless. And you can't go to the store and buy a bottle of that, but you can build it yourself and have it for the rest of your life.
So you're telling me there's not a quick fix?
Oh, yeah, no, unfortunately not.
Not a quick fix, but all these different ways that you broke it down. I really appreciate you showing us what that looks like. Being lovingly honest, talking about your triggers. I was really interested in that, like even putting them up so you remember. And over time, how this was an important practice too, I think that you said. Just even setting a timer to feel your feelings for 30 seconds. I notice a lot of clients really struggle with that. We all do. Then again, over time, you're able to forgive yourself more and catch that negative self-talk, which then leads to this space where you won't disrespect yourself anymore with that self-sabotage as you are listening more to your body, as you're being more honest and aware.
Yeah. And I think the biggest piece, and this is mind-blowing when I explain this to people, is when you're in self-sabotage of any kind, you wired your brain that when you are triggered, stress, whatever is going on, going to food is what is safe, comfortable, and familiar. One of the reasons why it feels so difficult in the beginning to change this is because you have to rewire your brain around what is safe, comfortable, and familiar. Right now, what feels unsafe, uncomfortable, and unfamiliar is taking ownership and responsibility for your triggers, trying something different, using a different tool, and working through the trigger. Because your brain is literally wired, no, this is what's safe and familiar. And even if it's detrimental, the brain doesn't recognize what is detrimental for us and what is good for us. It's just like, this is literally the pathway you've wired in your brain. And this is what is safe. The amygdala, stress center of the brain, fight or flight center of the brain, is scanning for threat all the time to keep you alive. And it senses discomfort as a threat to your survival. When you first start thinking about going on the journey or making these changes, it feels incredibly uncomfortable because you can't quick fix your way out of it. So if your comfort zone's been diets, calorie counting, weight loss, gimmicks, all this stuff, that's what's comfortable and familiar. And the thought of feeling, acknowledging triggers, setting boundaries, maybe even dealing with things like people pleasing, not weighing in every day, that feels uncomfortable. And your brain's like, this is a threat to your survival. Don't do it. Stay over here. Stay in this lane. But if we could understand some of these functions of the brain and understand it's going to be uncomfortable, but that is part of the healing. And what now feels uncomfortable is going to become your comfort zone. And what is your comfort zone of suffering right now is going to start to become incredibly uncomfortable. And that's one of the other things that leads you to healing this. I remember the last time I tried to emotionally eat, I bought a banana loaf and I was sitting there and I was like, this just feels really uncomfortable. Like, I don't even want to do this. And I didn't realize at the time that like, it's because I had rewired my brain for the most part. And that's why all of a sudden I was turned off from it, is because now I'm registering feeling and working through the trigger as a comfortable, safe place to be. So I just want to acknowledge that, because I think that's a huge reason why people, maybe they amp it up and they go, oh, I'm going to try something different. And then they keep reverting back. Because we actually do have to rewire the brain, and that takes time. And that's why you can't quick fix your way out of this, because if you've been in these habits for years or decades, it's going to take more than a day, a week, a month to overcome this.
Thanks for joining us for this meaningful conversation with Amber on uncovering the deeper roots of emotional eating and self-trust. If this episode spoke to you, explore how fulfillment therapy can help you create calm, confidence, and connection in your family life. Visit fulfillmenttherapy.org to learn about our upcoming group coaching, sign up for individual coaching, or subscribe to our weekly emails for mindful insights and tips straight into your inbox. We'll see you right back here for part 2. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.